Hello, everyone, and welcome to another webinar here at Route Consultant. For those of you who are here for the first time, never been to one of these before, my name is Josh Gregory. I am the director of our consulting and training teams here. So I work with new buyers and I work with sellers kind of across the spectrum. If you have been here before, if you're a regular attendee, welcome back. And again, we want this to be a space where everyone can come together, whether you're a new contractor, a new investor, or you've been doing this for decades. We want this to be a place where you can come, ask questions, and learn. And so hopefully have a little bit of fun too. But before we get to that, I have a quick disclaimer that I have to read as I do every week. So Route Consultant is not endorsed by and is not recommended by Federal Express Corporation, FedEx Ground, or Amazon. Route Consultant is not sponsored by, is not approved by, is not associated with, and has no connection whatsoever with Federal Express Corporation, FedEx Ground, or Amazon. So all that to say is that you're not going to hear any materially non-public information today, but we do want to make sure you hear something helpful and informative. So just a schedule of what this webinar is going to look like. I'm going to go over some updates, some admin things. We're going to go over some content today a little bit later, and then we will open it up to a pure open Q&A where any questions you have, whether it's what we talk about today or anything about the FedEx space, we're here to answer. So we will get to that at the end. Now, an important part of the question and answer session that happens at the end is that we do have a weekly tradition here where there is a question of the day that we need you to answer before we answer your question. So the question of the day this week is, if you could only use one condiment for the rest of your life, what would it be? So we will have you answer that at the end. So in the Q&A, if you will type in the answer to that question before typing in your question, we'll read them out live. We'll have some fun with it. And then myself and my co-host will answer those live as well. So a quick update on a couple of the upcoming events on the horizon. The short term, there is a happy hour in Philadelphia on June 1st. So if you're in the area, if you're in Jersey, if you're in any of those surrounding areas, these happy hours are free, completely free for you to attend, and we'll bring all the food and the drinks. So it's just a good place for you to meet our team, but also more importantly, to meet other contractors in your area. And even if you're not a contractor, you can come and attend one of these events. So if you are in that area and want to drive out for the event, we'll put the link in the chat and it'll show you where it is. You can register for free and we'll see you there, hopefully. Other than that, there's a huge event upcoming on July 28th through the 30th, which is the Expo. And that is the Contractor Party Expo. It's our biggest event of the year. There will be, thousands of contractors, but also investors. Everyone is welcome this year to come in and visit and kind of learn about the space. It is at the Paris Hotel in Las Vegas. And again, this one is completely free as well. We will cover all of the food, all of the drinks. The event is free. The only thing you have to cover is your travel out there and your hotel once you get there. And the important thing when it comes to that is the hotel is heavily discounted. We've got a hotel block, but that hotel block will sell out. So it is both cheaper and more convenient if you can get into that hotel block. So make sure if you're thinking about coming, go ahead and register for that hotel block now. And again, this is the best event of the year. This is, all of our team will be here. There will be contractors. Every vendor is going to be there. There's tons of events for you to learn about the space and get educated and help you be more successful as the year goes on. So hopefully I will see all of you there. This is, again, registration is open and we are only 2 months out now, which is crazy to say that we're 2 months away from the end of July. So those are the main events coming. Just a quick overview now of a couple of our new listings that have gone live this week. So first is in Central Michigan, we have 11 P&D routes at $725,000. This is one that has 2 managers, can be run remotely, has 12 trucks, mainly new vehicles, and it also has 4 spare drivers. And it's not running on Sunday right now. Next one is in North Carolina. It is 13 P&D routes at $799,000. Again, 2 managers can be run remotely. All the trucks are leased, and it comes, so an area where those leases can transfer, and there is some seller financing available as well. Next one is a line haul out of Ohio. This is 2 line haul runs at $450,000. And this is in one of the larger cities in Ohio. And then this is one that has a spare that is available as well. And so, if you're looking for an entry point into the line haul space, there's this one in Ohio. We also have another entry point into the line haul space in our next listing, which is out of Southern California. And it is 2 line haul runs at $315,000. And it has the 2 trucks, they're dedicated runs. So there's also some options for unassigned runs as well. So if you're looking at either of, looking to get into the line haul space, we have one on the West Coast and we've got one up in Ohio as well. So those are all the new listings this week. So jumping into what we'll be talking about today. So today I've brought Danny Robinson on, who's one of our sales directors here. And what Danny's going to talk through today is how to have some creative ideas around how to structure offers, how to structure deals beyond just kind of the typical leaning on cash or bank financing. So Danny, if you want to come on and give a little bit of an intro, I'll kick it over to you.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for being with us today. Am I on?
I hear you. You're good. Yeah.
Excellent. Appreciate y'all being here with us. Josh and I just wanted to take some time today to go over ways that we can construct creative deals to make things go a little bit more smoothly in the light of some current banking issues that we're facing. It's a very restrictive lending market out there, and sometimes getting creative with your deal structure can help minimize some of those pain points. So with all that being said, I'm going to touch on a few things today. We're going to go over some debt assumption options, maybe some seller financing things, ways to retain employees to help with the cost of transition and making sure that you're insulated on some of those things, as well as some other creative ways to get some cash for closing one of these deals. But I think when we're talking about creative deal structure, it makes the most sense to start with the seller financing discussion. I know that we have a link that we're about to put into the chat now. We did a full-scale seller financing webinar about a month ago. There's some really great stuff in there that I definitely brought to the table. Go watch me again. You'll love it. So I don't want to spend too much time going over that, but given the interest rates that people are seeing right now in the lending markets, seller financing is the most simple way to bridge some of the gaps that are there. It puts both buyer and seller in complete control over that aspect of the deal in the way that it's going to be amortized and the interest rates and everything else that the bank could possibly throw into the situation. So something to definitely keep in mind on both the buyer and the seller side. It makes everyone's life more simple. Enough about that. The link's in the chat. You guys can go and watch that video when we're done with this here today. And if you have any questions about that, I'm always available. I'm sure that my email is in there somewhere. Hit me up. Let's talk first about debt assumption and how that can be introduced into certain deals to make things go a little bit more quickly and to bridge some of the cash gap that you might have. So debt assumption is obviously it's well named. It's an aptly named aspect of deal structure. It doesn't need too much explanation, but let me talk to you about how we've introduced that into some of the deals that we've brokered here at Route Consultant. So let's put a hypothetical out there. Let's say we have a business that's being listed for $1 million. We've got a price that's been agreed to by both buyer and seller at $1 million. And the seller for that business is carrying $300,000 in active debt against their fleet. What would happen in that situation is when we go to the closing table, rather than the buying party bringing the full $1 million to the closing table, what they'll do is they will bring $700,000 to the closing table and then assume that other $300,000 debt that would come right off of the seller's back, and then they would take over those payments. And this is beneficial in a lot of different ways. Typically here at Route Consultant, when we structure these deals and we broker the businesses, they are done so and they are priced with the thought in mind that the trucks are going to come free and clear, titles in hand to the buying party. So that $300,000 would have been spent by the sellers at the closing table. There would have been payoffs done through escrow, and we would have presented titles to the buyers a few days after closing or whenever they were available to us. In this situation, what happens is more than likely the interest that's being paid on those vehicle liens is going to be at a smaller or a lower rate rather than whatever you're going to be paying in seller financing or a bank loan. But in the end of the day, a lot of times, if it's going to be a cash deal, it's easier to go ahead and save some of that operating capital in your reserves just in case something comes up and assume that debt so that you can parcel that payment out down the road a little bit. It's something that we do in a lot of different deals. One caveat that I'll add to the discussion here is that if you're going to be financing the remaining portion of that deal through maybe the SBA, there could be a situation, more often than not there is, where the SBA doesn't want to introduce debt assumption, mainly because they're going to want to collateralize those assets, and it's much more simple for them to do so with no other lien holder attached to them. So the SBA would likely broker into that deal the full purchase price of the business, have the vehicles paid off at closing, and then place a lien against them or collateralize those against the seller note. So in a nutshell, that's debt assumption rather. A very creative way, a very active way to get into some of these deals, especially if you're a cash buyer. Like I said, you got any way that you can come up with some cash, and then the debt assumption, more often than not, we can bridge whatever gap is remaining with some seller financing. And another thing that's really great to introduce into these deal structures, when you're talking about assuming one of these operations, one of the most common things that new investors come to us and ask is, hey, is there a manager with this business? It's super important to me to have some continuity to what was happening with that operation and introduce that into my own. So more often than not, we are transitioning the staff of the business along with the contract and the physical assets themselves. Obviously, there's some paperwork that needs to be done there. We're not selling people in these deals. That's not really the way that we do business here. But what we do often to ensure that there's not going to be a burden of recruitment and having to bring on new drivers and new managers is we introduce stay bonuses into the structure of these deals. And it's something that's been very successful in a lot of these, the deals that we've done over the past couple of years. And the way that we typically tend to structure those is we will say, let's pick a cash amount that makes sense for whatever position it is. Obviously, a higher cash amount for a manager than we would a driver, but you can do this for both of those positions, be it driver or BC. And what I typically do when I structure these into my deal is I structure them out over a 6-month length of time. Typically for a BC, I'm saying let's put a $5,000 stay bonus in place for them to really ensure that they're going to stick with the business, help you transition, and make sure you get your feet wet. And the way that we'll pay that out is after 60 days, we'll pay them $1,000. After another 30 days, we'll pay them another, $1,500. And then at the end of the 6-month period, there will be a big $2,500 bonus for them. It totals $5,000, gives them a little bit of juice along the way, but really incentivizes them to stay for that full 6 months. And at the end of that time period, you're really going to know if that's a relationship that you really want to continue with. Maybe you want to look for a new BC. Maybe you've seen some opportunity with other people that are driving for you that you would like to promote because you guys think a little bit more in line with one another than the BC that you absorb with the operation. But those first 6 months are going to be full of stress, full of things that you're learning, full of things that you didn't expect that you're going to be calling us up. Hey, what do we do? What do we do? We're going to have answers for you. But trust me, you're going to want that manager to stay on, and introducing these types of bonuses are the simplest way to do that. Everybody loves money, and it's very much so worth the dollars to introduce us into your deal structure. And a lot of times we've done structures where that bonus is paid 50-50 by buyer and seller. We can absolutely have both parties kick into that. A lot of times the sellers for these businesses have a vested interest in the success of the people that they've hired. They have a great connection and relationship with their BC, and they want to see them succeed well past that transition of the business. So something that we do pretty often, it's been very successful, and I would very much encourage all of you to talk to your brokers about introducing that into whatever deal structure you guys are working on with them. Another thing that's really, really, really helpful when you introduce it into the deal structure is consulting programs. It's no secret that Route Consultant is great at consulting when it comes to routes. It's kind of where we made our bones. We have a number of products that can help throughout the operational and the acquisition side of these. We have ways that we can help with DRO if that's been a pain point for your operation that you're trying to sell. But mostly what we've seen in the recent past is our P&D playbook, which is a P&D centric operational consulting program that we've launched in the last year. Jesse and Greg Smith are heading that up. They are our operational directors. They are absolutely fantastic. They managed the majority of Spencer's operations when he was up and running, and they did a fantastic job at it. And they're taking those decades of experience and condensing all of that invaluable P&D knowledge into one package. And at $8,500, it's very much worth the money there. So what we've done a lot is, as we've introduced more seller financing into the deals that we're brokering, we're telling the sellers, hey, really ensure those dollars that you're lending to this person with this business, and make sure that you can cut back on the time that you need to invest into the transition and to coaching and teaching these people how to run the business the right way, and let us do that for you. So we typically structure that to where at the closing table, through the escrow and the wire transfers that we're already doing with a number of truck payoffs and things that we've talked about previously, is we're paying for that $8,500 consulting package from the proceeds of the sale. The sellers bear that expense, that benefit, and that program is then assigned to the buyer of the business. And that's a 6-month long program where we really dive into every single thing operationally that could go wrong in your first year, tell you how to avoid it, tell you how to handle it if it still comes up and rears its ugly head, and really puts you in a much more comfortable and confident position to move forward as an operator. So the seller doesn't have to continue with that transition support past the first couple of weeks, and that all of those dollars that have been invested into the seller financing side of the deal are well insured, and you're not at risk of losing your contract because of an OTC or some unforeseen audit that came up and bit you. Really, there's not a whole lot more that we wanted to dive into with the deal structure stuff, but we have some creative ways that we've been garnering capital for our clients in the recent past. And one that I wanted to touch on really quick before we opened up the Q&A aspect of this is just to touch on the Rob's 401k program. This is something that we've had a lot of success with recently. And again, bridging that gap between the cash and debt assumption or the bank and seller note, whatever deal structure there is, if there's just a little gap there, the Rob's 401k has really been something that's been a big win for us lately. It's a really creative way to get capital. Obviously, what you're doing is you're liquidating, well, not liquidating, but you're capitalizing on your retirement account. And you're able to then inject that capital into the business acquisition that you're in the middle of. One caveat here, make sure that you have a C Corp set up. If you're doing this, you have to have a C Corp, can't be an S Corp. A C Corp actually allows shares of the business to be sold, and that's how you reimburse your 401k. It can get a little bit complicated. I don't want to drop anyone's names in this, but if you guys are curious about that, we definitely have some vendor partnerships that we've built over the past couple of years. Talk to your broker about it. We can make some introductions and really at a high level go into how that can help bridge the gap in capital needed for the acquisition. Josh, you got something you want to add to us?
Yeah. So thanks, Danny. That's what we wanted to talk about there is all the creative things we've seen and the things that you can do in your deal to either make the financing work or bridge gaps or even, avoid financing altogether or just improve your offer so that it goes farther. What I would say is just in the interest of education, I'll just do a quick overview of the way, the pros and cons of traditional financing. I'm not going to spend a ton of time here, but I know there's always questions on, SBA or conventional, which one should I look at? What are the pros and cons? So, this could be a whole webinar topic, but I'll just go through quickly just so that, anyone who has questions on it. So the two most common paths when we're talking traditional financing is the SBA or conventional. And so when you're thinking SBA, one of the biggest reasons that people use the SBA is that it has a lower qualification threshold than conventional banks. So they will lend to a much larger buyer set, even if your financials aren't as strong personally. The other nice thing is you get a 10-year amortization, which is great for your cash flow, especially early on when you're still trying to make everything make sense and figure out the weekly and monthly financials of your business. But a couple of the challenges come from the fact that it does take a lot longer to go through the SBA process. So it seems good on the front end, but it can really extend your deal process as you're trying to go through the approvals. And not every loan is going to qualify for the SBA. Generally, a couple of the things. So if it's a carve out, so if it's a piece of a larger business that was carved out, that will often not get through the SBA. It's not impossible, but it does make it more challenging. And then if it's been owned for less than a year is another reason it often doesn't make it through the SBA. One of the things that has been a negative, the interest rate is a variable rate. So it changes over time. And I would have said in the past that that's a negative, but right now it's actually a positive. So right now, if you get a rate, there's a very, very high possibility that that will continue to decrease over the next couple of years because we are at a high point as far as interest rates are concerned. So right now, it's actually a scenario where a fixed rate is less valuable right now than a variable rate is, because if you get a fixed rate right now or where you're at your peak, then you're going to be stuck at that rate. One of the other main challenges with the SBA, just to be aware of, is that there's an origination fee that's generally between 2 and 5% of the purchase price. You won't have to pay it in cash. The SBA will be very happy to roll that into the total loan amount, but it is an expense that you need to factor in and think about. Now that's it. Pros and cons for the SBA. On the other side is conventional. So interest rates with a conventional bank are lower, but they're fixed. So like I talked about, that is a con right now. The process is faster as well. But I would say the approval process is generally more stringent than the SBA because there's no backing of these conventional banks by the federal government like you see on the SBA. The other big challenge is that usually you're going to get a 5-year amortization on these conventional loans. If you're really lucky or you have a fantastic relationship, great history, you might be able to get a 7-year, but most of the time you're going to see 5 years. So those payments are going to be higher. Also, the nice thing about conventional, the origination fee is generally only between 0.5% and 1%. So it is cheaper there as well. The big thing, though, to know when it comes to conventionals, when you're trying to decide which of those banks, which regional bank to go with for that, they care about where you live, not where the routes are. So if you're buying routes in New Jersey, but you live in Pennsylvania, the bank cares about where you live right now, not where the routes are. So that's what, when you're looking at what bank to use for that, use the bank based on where you live right now. Now, just as a general note, SBA or conventional, my biggest warning, my biggest caveat is do not use a bank that has not done a FedEx deal before. The biggest kind of red flags, the biggest hurdles that I see people run into is they're working with a bank that they may have a great relationship with or that they've talked to in the past. And the bank tells them they will fund the deal, and you get all the way up to the finish line, and that's when the bank says, oh, sorry, actually, we can't fund FedEx deals. This doesn't match what I expected. It's usually when it hits credit or when it's in underwriting, they'll realize it and kill the deal. So make sure you're working with someone who's done at least one deal, hopefully multiple FedEx deals. And we do have a big list of those on the SBA and the conventional side that we can introduce you to if you need those referrals. So that's just what I wanted to quickly cover on the traditional banking side, just so that you know it. But I do want you, right now it is, some of banking is harder with interest rates being as high as they are. So it's harder to get funding. So I do want you to think about all of the things Danny talked about today: seller financing, creative structures, all of those things as being tools you need to pull out in all of these deals to make it work. And as a seller, I really want you to be cognizant of these facts because, if you can kind of rationalize and come to terms with seller financing as a tool for you, it will significantly open up the number of buyers that you can work with and the better price that you can get from those buyers by opening the buyer pool beyond just what can get funds from a bank. So all of these are important for both sides of the deal. We just wanted to make sure everybody was aware of the different ways these deals could look. So before we open it up to peer Q&A, a reminder for everyone that the question of the day this week is if you could only use one condiment for the rest of your life, what would it be? And I want everybody to answer that before they type in their question in the Q&A. So while Danny and I are answering that question, you can go ahead and start loading the Q&A with any questions you have. But before that, Danny, if you could only use one condiment for the rest of your life, what would it be?
It's going to be ranch dressing. I don't even think it's that close. I don't put ranch dressing on cold things. Like I don't eat salads. I don't put salad dressing on that. But there's nothing that's hot or deep fried that is not enhanced with a little bit of ranch on
it. So I would strongly agree, except for I also will put it on cold stuff. Yeah, I love ranch, and I feel that it is just a flavor enhancer regardless. There was a point in time when I was in grad school and not spending any money where my only snack that I had was saltine crackers with ranch. And that was like my snack. I had that all the time. So yeah. Ranch through everything. Yeah. So yeah, that's my answer too. We're on the exact same page. There's very few condiments that I would, I think I'm in the same spot. I don't think there's anything else that's close. So okay.
Baby raised barbecue sauce and ranch dressing. It's got to be buttermilk ranch too, Hidden Valley.
My wife started putting that fat-free ranch in the fridge. It just doesn't work. It's not the same.
That's grounds for a different type of relationship. You got to
I know.
Can't be around it. Can't do it.
Oh man. Okay, so we've got our first question here from David. He said, a sandwich is not a sandwich without Miracle Whip. And while I agree with you, I do like mayonnaise on my sandwiches. There are the list of things that I will put mayonnaise on are that's a very small list. So if I had to live with that as my only condiment forever, that will significantly impact the things I eat because I like to put sauces on everything. So Yeah. So his question is, have BC bonuses changed over the last year or so? I've seen it $2,000 to $2,500 over the last 6 months. Have you seen different things? And some of it too, Danny, could be part of it. A lot of the deals you represent are on the West Coast, so that could be a case too. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that the ones that I've seen may differ a little bit from some of the ones that we've done historically, mostly because I've had the benefit of brokering some rather large CSAs over the last couple of years. And I feel like it's probably relevant to say that the size of the CSA and the number of routes can definitely have an impact on the size of the bonus. Because typically the size of the CSA is going to dictate how much you're paying your manager, how much they're really doing for you, whether they're driving or not driving. All of those things can kind of come into play. I wouldn't focus so much on the dollar amount that I said, but more the timeline and the structure of that. Whatever the amount is, I typically do like a 10%, 20%, and then the remaining 70%, something to that effect when I structure that out. Just like I said, it's really backloaded and heavily incentivizes them to stay throughout that bonus period that we're talking about. And I love the Miracle Whip comment, but down here in the South, it's all about Duke's mayonnaise, not Miracle Whip for us.
That's fair. I'm pretty brand agnostic when it comes to mayonnaise, but I would say, yeah. I mean, I think those are all good points, and I think the reality of it is that we give ranges around manager bonuses, but it is all going to be dependent on the deal, the part of the country. What is that manager doing? How important are they for you? Like, is this a guy who is doing everything, and so losing them is almost the end of the world, or is it just kind of an operational BC who helps with dispatch and is valuable, but maybe not worth all the way going up that far? So I think it's more of understand the concept, the structure, the timeline, and then make judgment calls based on the amount, based on your a few other things. Okay, so next one here is from Mike. His answer is barbecue sauce, which you already mentioned it. That's a second choice. I'll take it. There are fewer things I would eat it on, but I'll still take barbecue sauce. But I know Danny's already given his vote, but it will matter what type of barbecue sauce. That is a broad category, and it has a big impact on how we judge your sauce, Mike. So, but his question is, we kind of talked about collateral for SBA and financing. So, what are we typically seeing as acceptable types of collateral, and how much of the sale value is typically required as collateral?
Yeah, it's a great question. The SBA specifically, I was mentioning in the question, so I'll hit that first. The SBA is always going to want first crack at the fleet. A lot of times there's opportunity to have collateralization surrounding investment properties that you're dealing with. They won't, by law, I believe it still is, Josh, correct me if I'm wrong, they cannot collateralize your primary residence, but investment real estate is available.
Yeah, the SBA will try to come for your house. They will, that will be a part of the conversation. I will say SBA, not conventional, but SBA. Yeah. And then, your fleet is almost always going to be in the conversation. And that's also why, if you're doing a deal that you're assuming the truck debt and trying to do the SBA, you can run into some hiccups because the SBA will want to collateralize the fleet and have all of the debt under them, versus if you're bringing SBA from a lender in addition to the SBA, you can run into some hiccups. So it's not it's not the end of the world if you don't have all the collateral to cover it. The SBA might come after properties. I will say on the conventional side, if your financials and the business's financials are strong enough, it can sometimes justify a lower amount of collateral. So I can't point to an exact percentage of the sales price, an exact amount that has to be covered by the collateral. But typically they will want all of the fleet as kind of a minimum. And then from there, it's a function of how good is the business, how good are your financials, if we need additional collateral beyond that.
Yeah. And just to finish up on the point there, with all of the SBA deals that I'm currently brokering, they've really kind of stopped at the fleet. What seems to matter more to the SBA right now is cash flowing things based off of what the business is producing revenue and profit wise. So bridging the gap to make the cash flow look a little bit better with seller financing has been a bigger piece of the puzzle than the collateral has been. Won't say that that's uniform across the board, but in the territories that I broker and manage and I'm director over, that's kind of what I've seen.
Perfect. All right, we've got a last question here, unless somebody throws an extra one in, from Jason. Says his favorite condiment is ketchup. Must be Heinz. I also do not, I am very brand agnostic when it comes to ketchup. And, ketchup used to be one that I had it on a lot of things. And it's now a condiment that if it's in my, I'd be surprised if it was in my fridge right now at home. And basically the only time I eat it is at a restaurant when they give it to me, like already on the plate. Okay.
Yeah.
You're in the same place, or do you like ketchup?
Yeah, I'll tell you, people make fun of me, but the only time I really eat ketchup is on hot dogs. People tell me you got to have mustard on a hot dog, but I'm not a mustard guy. It'll actually kind of kill me. I'm allergic to mustard seeds, so I don't eat it. But
Okay.
ketchup on a Nathan's hot dog, chef's kiss.
I do ketchup and mustard, so I got them both. Okay, so Jason's question is, sometimes it feels like he hears that a seller's putting a listing together, but it takes a long time. In your experience, what can take as we're trying to put a listing together, what is it that can make the process take a longer time?
Yeah, there's three real big things that come to mind right off the top. One specific deal that I'm working on evaluating right now in the Tennessee market. There's just some nuance to what's on the Schedule B. The worksheets are showing that the gentleman runs about 24 routes a day as a maximum, but he's only got 18 trucks on his Schedule B. So piecing together a full and comparable evaluation when building those long-term rental prices into it can definitely be a burden to our evaluating team. Not that we can't get past those hurdles, but sometimes when we're going back and forth with a lot of different things, we're talking to rental companies or leasing companies and CPAs, plus the seller, plus the ever-changing notion of volume. Yes, there's consistent number of routes run every day, but with the fluctuation and now the integration of express and more trucks being out on the road than usual, it can definitely throw some things into flux there. So what we'll never do here at Route Consultant is present something to the market that we've not fully evaluated, that has not gone through our compliance office and has not been approved by a number of different regulators that we keep here in-house. We're going to make sure that what we're presenting to our investors is provable, it's bankable, and it's accurate.
Yeah, and I think that's, at the end of the day, what can make things just take longer is because we don't want to, there is an analysis run. It's not just we're waiting, the seller gives us information, we present it. Yep. There are several rounds of checks. We want to make sure that it's accurate and that we can be comfortable presenting those numbers so that you as a buyer can be comfortable receiving them. And so that can be one of the biggest reasons it takes a while. Sometimes it's just busyness of the seller. Like there could be any number of things going on in their lives or at their terminal that makes it where it's hard to get a certain document or to get a certain answer around a truck or mileage or any number of things. So it's not as simple as they send us information and we present it, and you wouldn't want that because then there's no checking of if it's accurate or not.
That's exactly right. The other thing that I'd say has been taking just a little bit of time recently is in the last 3 to 4 months, we've seen a lot of terminals ending Sunday delivery. So that can definitely improve our evaluation metrics. But what we'll need to do when that happens is we can't just say, oh, Sunday delivery is over, let's adjust it. We'll need to wait 3 or 4 weeks to see how the settlements change, how the worksheets change, how the payroll is fluxed or waned. And then we can build that into a provable and justifiable evaluation.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Okay, next one here. Have you tried mayo on French fries? So I don't know. Have you lived overseas, Lyndall? Because my wife is the exact same way, and she picked it up in Germany, and she swears by it. I think it's fine, but that is her preferred condiment on all French fries, and I just can't do it. It just doesn't look right to me. But I've tried it enough to know that it's not bad, but it will never be my choice. So his question is, what is the effect of how is the restructuring of FedEx affecting value of routes? So what he's pointing to here is Express and how there is an integration of Express and Ground and the future potential of that. What I would say is there's only a couple of terminals that's fully rolled out in, and it's coming out in stages. So while it is additional volume and it will have an effect on valuations, currently there's not really any in the marketplace that include Express so that it's affecting valuations, and we haven't seen it be enough of an effect across the industry to affect multiples. So really what I would say is that the potential is there and volume is going to increase. So while it's not affecting valuations, it should be affecting your thought process as you're looking at listings. Right now, essentially, you're buying volume that is coming, but you don't have to pay for. So that's how I would look at it. But right now, we don't have enough information on any of these, and there's no one, who's selling Express that's only out in a couple of terminals. So there's not enough right now to put together concrete numbers, because Express is going to look a little different per area. So you really would need more information than just saying Express is coming to increase that number, but it should be a part of your thought process as you're looking at the space. And then, so this is a good question from Mike. So he asked one earlier. And so his question is, we mentioned continued training after acquisition. So how long would we estimate it takes a new owner after transition to kind of get their bearings, and what continued requirements they might be looking at? What would we think there in terms of how long it takes you to kind of wrap your arms around the business?
Yeah, so I typically structure at least, 30 or so days of transition support from the seller into the deal, be it over the phone or via email, whatever it is. But I think to truly acclimate yourself into what you're going to be seeing there, 60 to 90 days is probably a fair assumption, because there's so many different aspects of the ground world and the ecosystem that you're going to be living in that aren't all going to hit you at once. You're going to need to see what it's like taking in extra volume on a holiday weekend, maybe like a Mother's Day or something like that, when there's a surplus in packages and you guys need to work that DRO out. Over that time frame, you're probably going to lose a driver or two, because that's just the nature of the rotating, driver roster that you're going to have. So going through some recruitment and some hiring, driver training aspects and things like that. I think that really that 90-day threshold is when you can expect to have really experienced the majority of what you're going to need to know and be comfortable with as an operator. But really, I mean, you're not going to know everything until you're in there for a full year. Once you get back to the point where you started the following year, you've been through peak season, you've been through the slowdown and the uptick and everything. It takes you a while. I mean, that's why our P&D playbook, that operational consulting plan, is a 6-month-long program, because that's how long it's probably going to take you to really take in everything. So I know I threw out a few numbers there, but 90 days is probably the minimum threshold there, going upwards of 6 months.
Yeah, I'd say the first 90 days are the most important, because it's the point where the least, and there's things you can do wrong in those first 90 days. So but Danny's right, 6 months is good kind of thought process to point at. But even after it's been a year, after it's been a couple of years, they're going to be learning stuff all the time, especially with FedEx changing things. It's just the constant is change in FedEx. So there's always going to be more to learn. And so that's why we have that program is built. Like any contractor can use that P&D playbook that we mentioned, but we really like, in your first year is probably the best time to look at it, because that's the point where it's most critical that you're not missing anything. It's not that you can't use it later, but the things you can get wrong early before you know better is when we really encourage people to use it. And a funny question from John here. He said, why are you talking about ketchup and mayo? John, you probably missed the question of the day that we had is, what if there was one condiment that if you could only have one condiment again for the rest of your life, what would it be? So ketchup and mayo have been a couple of answers to this, and that is why we were talking about ketchup and mayo.
Maybe we need to revert back to that previous comment, because I didn't get to put my 2 cents in on there, and there's nothing I love more than hearing my own voice. Mayonnaise on French fries is a hard pass for me. In college, I dated this girl who was obsessed with dipping French fries into Italian dressing. That was a relationship ruiner. French fries are fine on their own. Ranch dressing, maybe, like with a seasoned curly fry, but mayo on French fries, it's a hard pass, guys. Get it right. Come on.
That is very fair. Yeah, Italian, I've never heard that. So, okay, perfect.
It didn't last long. She weird.
All right. Well, that is all we have time for. So I appreciate everyone coming out today. A big reminder, everyone is invited to the expo this year, whether you're looking at the space for the first time, new investor, or you've been a contractor for a while. We would love to see you in Vegas this year. And again, it is July 29th through 30th. It's completely free as long as you get out there and get a hotel room. So we've put the link in the chat. All of that information is there. You can go register. And again, I do hope to see you there. Oh, and the other thing I forgot to mention, Kevin O'Leary is our headline speaker, which is really exciting. I can't wait. So he will be there, and all of us will be there, contractors, vendors. So hopefully we will see you there too. Other than that, thanks, Danny, for joining, and I hope everyone has a great rest of the week.
Thanks, everybody.